Welcome to the Assist Podcast, where today we have a very special episode. Captain Marvel hit theaters a couple weeks ago. I don't remember the exact date, but it hit the theaters. And today we have assembled the Assist's very own Avengers. Joining me today is Katie Justiniani.
Yo.
And Thorin Bartlebaugh.
Hello there.
We all saw the movie together. I think we all enjoyed it pretty well, and we're here to talk about full review. Spoilers are included, so if you care about those and don't want... there are a couple twists in this movie. If you don't want that spoiled for you, listen later. Still download, please, but listen later. And if you have watched the movie and enjoyed it and are one of the billions that love the movie, this is your place to have true, honest movie criticism, because that's what we do. Other than being college students. Okay. Anyway, how are both of you?
Oh, I am swell. Thank you for asking.
I am so good.
Well, I'm glad everyone's doing great on this lovely Tuesday evening. I'm doing well myself.
I forgot to ask, my bad.
I was thinking about it.
So let's start off the show by talking about the best actor performance and character that we enjoyed. There were a couple really good ones. Brie Larson, of course, was starring as Captain Marvel. Samuel L. Jackson was starring as Nick Fury. Ben Mendelsohn, I think I'm pronouncing that right, as the Skrull leader Talos. Jude Law as Jan Rog, and Phil Coulson is also in this movie. And there's a lovable, adorable cat named Goose, after, of course, the airplane movie. Top Gun. That's what it is.
The airplane movie.
Max is going to hate me.
That narrows it down.
So, Katie, who did you think was the best actor performance, or who were you most impressed by?
I think Larson did a pretty good job with the authenticity of the character. Having some of the Stark-esque humor with the rawness of figuring out who she is kind of really made her an overall enjoyable character. I'm really excited to see how she interacts with the Avengers in Endgame, especially Thor. I think they are going to date.
The two most powerful people in the Marvel Universe are going to date.
Yeah.
Based off the last trailer we saw, right? The interaction they have you're talking about?
Yes.
That's
I'm in
interesting.
support.
Thank you.
She's a suitable replacement for Natalie Portman.
Ooh.
Natalie Portman was unofficially killed off in the Marvel Universe.
It made me very sad.
She just kind of walked off. We know that she was snapped away.
That's true. She's part of the... They call it the decimation now.
Oh my god.
That's what it's called.
Is that what it's called?
Yes, that's officially what it's called.
I love that. That sounds like the defecation, which just means the poop.
That's true. So I agree with you. I thought Larson did really well and brought a good level of humanity and, like you said, authenticity to a character whose actually origins are more alien. Mm-hmm. Obviously, since she is basically half Kree. I don't know, they never really say, but she has Kree blood and has the powers of the Tesseract or whatever. So, but I thought she did a really good job because it turns out that she doesn't really know who she was on Earth and all that stuff, so I think she did good. My pick, though, is Ben Mendelsohn. This man is playing a green alien, which sounds ridiculous, right? Green alien, they said his makeup did 3.5 hours, and this man is supposed to be the villain, set up. You see him once early on, and he comes in being all menacing and angry and stuff, drinking a milkshake to confront Captain Marvel. This man was able to be a bad villain, meaning legitimate bad guy villain, comedic relief as he's sitting there drinking a milkshake, and in many other scenes that we'll get to as my favorite line, be humorous as he's why is Earth in the 90s this weird place? And also sympathetic with the refugee situation that it turns out the Skrulls were in the whole time, and his family. And also a complete badass when he had to fight and become and do the Skrull shift-changing thing. So, my pick is Mendelsohn. Also, did you guys know Mendelsohn was himself when he played Talos being the S.H.I.E.L.D. director? There's a point in the movie where the S.H.I.E.L.D. director is Talos Shape-shifted.
There we go.
And that was his true, like, human form. Like, that was just Mendelsohn himself. I didn't know that. I didn't know what Mendelsohn looked like until this movie. But that's what he was. That was pretty cool. So he plays two roles.
Easier. Yeah.
Yes, that's what he looked like in Rogue One, but you wouldn't know.
Well, yeah, so that's my pick for his role. Thorin, what's your favorite?
I agree with both. Like, there was an amazing cast. Like, they did a great job portraying their characters. I always have to go with Sam Jackson. He just makes every movie for me. Like, Hitman's Bodyguard, that was phenomenal. He's good in Star Wars. Amazing. He looked so like himself in the 90s. He brought the mood up every single time. Like, there was like an awkward place, or if it was gloomy, he would just say something ridiculous, and it would hit every time. I loved it. I loved it all.
Yeah, it seems like it was more of a happier almost feel to Nick Fury in this, because he isn't obviously the director yet. He's just kind of like a new agent. So it's almost like a naiveness to the character that we haven't seen yet, and I thought that was really cool.
It was stuff that I knew was there when I saw him, in the Avengers, and I was like, I know this guy's funny. His character, like I want to see more, and this movie gave me exactly that. It made him feel more like a person instead of like, the head of the Shield organization, where he's there for a couple scenes and then he's gone. You don't really know what he does.
Behind the eye patch.
Speaking of the eye patch, I saw the video of the Winter Soldier moment when Nick Fury tells Cap, "The last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye." How do you both feel that someone was a cat?
I enjoyed it.
I forgot about that. I think that's hilarious.
So for context... for context, like, Goose, the cat, who actually isn't a cat but is a flurkin, Fury develops a nice relationship with during the movie, and the cat, I believe Fury trusted the cat with the Tesseract, and like that was this trusting moment, and then the cat ended up just scratching his eye, and he obviously ended up wearing the eye patch throughout the rest of the universe. So that's the backstory. I thought it was great.
He picks up the cat and says, "I'm trusting you not to kill me."
Oh my gosh!
And that's when it happened.
And so
I think we were all
30 years, and he hasn't trusted anyone. Interesting.
No, not at all. Basically, I mean, just because of this cat scratching, I just thought it was great because when that movie first came out, the Winter Soldier movie, we're all like, "Oh my goodness, this is some sketchy backstory," and all along it was a cat. 5 years.
First we knew.
What do you mean, the first we knew what?
About his eye. Or was I just blinded to the fact that his eye was scratched out by Marvel's Flurkin?
His, like, the Winter Soldier thing came up with the eye because, like, in that movie, there was some verification thing where Fury used his other eye, the eye that was scratched out. And, like, everyone's like, oh, no, I didn't know that he still had it or whatever. Yeah. But, like, in terms of this, I mean, I can't imagine that when Marvel did that scene in 2014, they're like, we're going to pay this off with a cat.
I'm so glad they did.
But, yeah, I think it was just a good point. They're like, hey, why not? This is pretty funny, isn't it? And I think it went along with the character Fury was in this movie as the kind of newer, greener agent. So
yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So... do either of you have a favorite Marvel banter line? Marvel's famous for these. There were a lot of them, obviously, with it being set in 1995. There was a lot of material to work with. Did you guys have either one? Or a favorite one?
There's so many. There's so many. But I want to have to agree with you about your idea, but I don't want to take it, so I think you should bring it up.
Okay, so there's a scene because it turns out that Brie Larson's character, Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, was a former, U.S. Air Force pilot.
Yeah.
So obviously, when you're flying a plane, there's a black box that's able to record conversations and is usually recovered in crashes. So they end up being able to find it, whatever, and they're trying to listen to it to figure out what happened the day Carol Danvers crashed her vehicle. Now, this is 1995, so you can imagine the loading time the internet has. So basically, I can't remember everyone in the room, but it's Goose, the cat, the Flarkin, whatever you want to say, Nick Fury. I can't remember if Phil Coulson was there or not. Captain Marvel's best friend, who was also flying that day, and then the alien Talos. So Talos is sitting there, and he's just like looking around at everyone, kind of like, what's going on? And so is Captain Marvel, because these are two people that come from these super high-tech alien societies that can travel basically through hyperspace. For Star Wars fans, just know, like, that's how fast they traveled through space in the movie, essentially. And, you know, like, have these superpowers and all this stuff, and they're like, I mean, the other race can literally shape shift into different people. So it's like they're waiting for the bars to go and go and go. It's at least, maybe a minute and a half of awkwardness, and they're like, so what's going on? It's like Nick Fury's like, it's loading. And it was just so perfectly early internet 90s with crappy Wi-Fi that these two such advanced beings, and Marvel played it perfectly. They were sitting there, and it truly made me laugh out loud. I was like, that's perfect.
I think they did a great job with that type of like culture shock thing. Where, like, I know how we are. Like, we didn't get to experience the 90s. We kind of got the remnants of it in the 2000s, but like I still could relate to it in a little bit. Like, it was just so funny to me.
Yeah,
that was great.
You loved the 90s music too.
Yes, a little bit of salt and pepper. Never hurt. And the blockbuster.
The blockbuster was
Blockbuster.
perfect.
Yeah, Captain Marvel crashed into the Blockbuster at the very beginning of the movie, and it was like, oh, I remember the days. I do remember Blockbuster.
I do remember Blockbuster. That was perusing the aisles.
The best weekend ever.
What was the other one? Circuit City, was it?
Yeah.
Yes.
That closed down? Yep.
It was like a Radio Shack, yeah.
Yeah. Katie, what was your favorite banter line?
My favorite banter line was kind of towards the end. It was at the end of one of the big fight scenes, and what was the guy's name? I'm going to pronounce it wrong.
Jan Rog.
Jan Rog.
Jude Law's character, the Kree.
Yes. Jude Law challenges her at the very end. They go off in a face-off, and she just defeated everyone. Mm-hmm. And he realizes that he's going to get his butt kicked, and he's like, you know what? Just skip your powers and just fight me. Just use your real power. Like, you don't need all this extra stuff. Just fight me for real. And then she just blasts him into the wall. Like, why would I do that? Like, I have fire hands. That was my favorite part.
Yeah, they
do
were
all
setting
those
it up.
setups in movies, and it's ridiculous. And she was like, no, it's dumb.
Yeah, they were setting it up to be like a same power situation kind of thing. And then she's just like, yeah, no, screw this.
That was so fulfilling. Because when I saw that, I thought it was going to happen. Like, they were going to fight. I was like, this is dumb. We're going to add on an extra, 20 minutes to this.
Yep. And it turns out they didn't.
No, it was very fulfilling.
Great decision. So, yeah.
Precisely.
Next question. How MCU is this? Obviously, there's been almost an MCU type of formula where these movies have a lot of similarities, despite being culturally different and different characters. You know, obviously the humor's been one, the kid kind of friendly. A lot of the CGI fights at the end have been very similar across all the movies. So, how MCU do we think this movie fits in there as the 21st entry into the universe?
I think it fits in well, but it does a great job at standing out from everything else. Mm-hmm. Like, I think the biggest part of me is because it's set in the 90s, it has such a unique identity. And that's even even if you look at Guardians of the Galaxy, how they're in a whole advanced civilization. Yeah. It's more relatable to where we are now than sort of what the 90s is. Because in the 90s, nothing was even conceived like that. So it's just, I think it's a great watch, just like I said, for the culture, but it does fit well into it, I believe.
I agree. These throwbacks that they're kind of doing, or not really throwbacks, these kind of odes to the last few decades, they kind of hit home for a lot of the audiences. And I think that sense of relatability, like you said, Thorin, is something that the audience really likes, because the Marvel fan base, they like, you know who they are, like the people that stay in the movie theater after the movie ends and you see the credits keep going and they still sit down. I think it just kind of adds to the unity of the Marvel community by just making it more relatable and touching home more.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, surely. And I think the other thing that was really key is that, yes, it's a prequel basically to a lot of the Marvel universe in the sense that it's in the 90s. But they were able to mix current cultural elements in. For instance, there was, and especially in the promo, there was just the touch of feminism. I would say all three of us were happy that the movie wasn't overly feminist or pushing for that. It was almost just, it's just a story about a character. Or a person, which is exactly how it should be, right? We all for the equal representation. So I enjoyed that, but it just had that element a little bit of, yeah, this movie is coming out now for this reason, but it's still set in the 90s, as in this could have happened at any point. So I thought that was really a key thing, and they played that card correctly, I thought, for all moviegoers, and didn't get too political or feminist or whatever you want to say. It was just the right touch.
Oh, absolutely. Like, there's in the scene where she's going back in her memories and she's getting berated by a male Air Force pilot saying how women could never fly. Like, I didn't feel like that was forced. It was more of a a fuel to her backstory, like a fuel to her fire in the future and her motivation. That was what drove her. It's not dumb, shoehorned in things. It's a legit reason. And,
precisely.
Everyone can relate to that and support. Like, that was wrong. You're standing up against that in a way, like, all for it. And it didn't feel like we were watching someone lecture us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. And, like, the thing is, with all of the Marvel movies, I feel like every single one of our characters, they've all overcome an adversity of some type. And, like you just said, Thorin, hers... a big part of it, like her and her best friend dealt with sexism in the military, but that was just a part of her story. And I think what one of the big bummers is there might have been more to that, but with it being the movie being released right now, that Marvel had to be so careful about how much women empowerment they put into this without quote unquote shoving it down people's throats. Because how many people have asked you guys was Captain Marvel always a girl, or did they just change it now?
I've had one person. Yep.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And the answer is that she's always been a girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my case, it was kind of it was more of has she always been a girl? As in, not in the fact that being a girl is wrong, but did they change the character just to change it? Or And I said, no, she's always been a girl. And he goes, oh, okay. I thought it was for a dumb reason, all for it, whatever. So
yeah, and I think that's something that Marvel does really well, is that these movies, although they might contain quote unquote hidden images or kind of things like that, hidden meanings, generally they're for the masses. And that's why they make so much money. For instance, I know when Iron Man first came out in 2008, right around that time I watched it for the first time and I loved it. We're on now 11 years later, and I still love Tony Stark's character then, but also appreciate his great arc. So that's the kind of thing where it's these movies are made, and no matter what age you are, where you're from, or anything, you can usually get some enjoyment from it. Or maybe that's just not your superhero, That's why there's multiple, So I think they also played into that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can see Captain Marvel being very, very relatable to some, and an icon to look for, how you view Iron Man. It's their character, and they love their story and their background and their motivations. Everyone has a different one, just like every character has a different personality, and that's nothing but good. We don't need cookie cutter stuff. That's just boring and forced.
Yep. Speaking of cookie cutter stuff, let's talk about Stan Lee and the new logo series they had, because this was anything but cookie cutter.
I was gonna say, where are you going with cookie cutter here?
Gotta get my transitions in somehow.
It was such a beautiful scene. No words exchanged, just a smile, and that was it. Everyone felt it. Everyone felt the entire conversation in their head, and it didn't even need to happen.
All right, paint the scene for us, Thorin.
So she just chased this shapeshifter into the bus. I can't remember if she clocked the old lady in the face yet. I don't think she did. And she's looking around for any sign of someone who might give away that they're a shapeshifter. And she comes across a random man just sitting reading some lines for a script of a movie he's trying to get into. And she walks up to him, and he lowers the script, and it's Stan Lee's beautiful face. Looks up at her, she looks up at him, and they both smile. And she walks right on. Beautiful. 10 out of 10. And then she clocks the old lady in the face.
Makes me want to cry thinking of this.
It is truly incredible. That, and then the opening montage, instead of the usual Marvel series of logos, was really touching.
Oh.
It felt like a love letter.
It was so sweet. So, like, in the beginning, when the big montage of all the superheroes are there, it was just changed with every scene of every cameo that Stan did. And it just said, "Thank you, Stan," afterwards. And
truly touching. The only word I can describe it is pure.
Yes.
It was so pure.
Pure is the great word for that.
Can we just appreciate the quality of Stan Lee's cameos, though? Like, they never felt forced. They were, like, truly funny. And everyone loved Stan Lee, man. Like,
he's so precious.
Yeah,
we lost a real one.
Well,
this was... Sorry, go.
No, I'd say he has one more in Endgame. I did look it up.
He
still
might
has
have more.
one more credit. No, it says it.
But this one I'd say is the most important one, because he's playing himself. And this is, correct me if this is one of the first characters he created, right? Captain Marvel?
I know he's had a hand in almost every character created. I'm not sure what the timeline of the creation is.
Oh. Well, then we'll ignore that part. But being one of the first, members of the, she's not an Avenger, is she?
Yeah, she counts. She'll be in the next Avengers movie, which means...
Being one of the first, superheroes, being the first hero for Nick Fury, okay.
Yes, there you go.
Forming the team, really. And, I'm getting sad, and my words aren't coming to me. Anyways, Stan Lee playing himself is important. And the line that he kept repeating was, "Trust me, true believer." And people are trying to say, that's kind of the motivation that that Captain Marvel tried to repeat to herself when she was going through all of her hard times. When she wasn't able to understand her real reality. So Stan was kind of her guardian angel.
I didn't even think about that.
I didn't put that together.
That makes it all the more better. It's just
I know.
Even more amazing.
I know. Anyways, before we start crying, next part.
So, next question. Is this movie rewatchable? Some Marvel movies are very rewatchable. I would argue Iron Man, Captain America Civil War, those types of ones. And some, such as perhaps The Incredible Hulk, are not. Whether or not it's a good or bad movie, sometimes they're just not rewatchable. The twists aren't great anymore. What do you guys think? Do you think this movie is rewatchable? Will you watch it again when it comes out on DVD?
I think I'd watch it again. The only issue I ever had was it was kind of slow at the start.
Yeah.
But watching it for the mid to the end parts, with all the comedy and the amazing twist of the Skrull, seeing the way that the characters react, I think it was very well put together. I would rewatch it. Just the start is kind of something you could skip through, get the gist of it, and then keep going. Important for the first watch, but not really for the remaining.
Yeah, I agree. First watch, very important, but afterwards it could be something that you fall asleep to. Not in a bad way, but I really enjoyed it. I could watch it again and again just because of the attention to detail in making the movie. Like, just everything that they did to try and make sure that it seemed like the 90s. Like, you know that the movies on the shelves in Blockbusters, they had to be important. So I feel like there's a lot in there that we could look at. And I think that's just me with all of them. Yeah. I like it.
I think it is too, for the different reason, because Thorin mentioned it. The one thing you lose watching it again is that the Skrull twist isn't really there anymore. And what we mean by that is that we all went into the movie, and they advertised it too, is that the Skrulls were going to be the bad guys. And the first part of the movie makes you think that up until it starts to pick up. It really starts to pick up once Talos is like, we're just refugees, and your people actually have subjugated us. So let's talk about that. So once that gets going, I think it really picked up. But once you lose that, I think then you watch it differently, because you watch the beginning of the movie from the fact that Talos is just desperate enough to save his family. So I'd be interested to watch the movie again from that viewpoint, and not just having me sit there, being stunned that the Skrulls, they're good in this movie for some reason, but that they are just people as refugees. So that would be my main thing for watching it again.
Oh, yeah. It even kind of mirrored. Well, not kind of. It vastly mirrored conflicts today, where you go to war and you realize that it's not even what you thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I thought it's just an amazing movie overall, that compared and contrast the real world to their fictional world.
Yeah.
It was great.
So I was reading something about that, actually, because the Skrulls we see in this movie, this faction, I guess you can say, are pretty good. They're good-natured. They want to work with Captain Marvel, which is interesting because in the comics, of course, the Kree and the Skrulls are both kind of bad to Earth, and they want to both take over Earth for their own empires. And basically, I'm minimizing a whole big storyline. But then the Avengers save the world from both of them in a way, and they tell both to go away. So the Kree and the Skrull both have the same kind of abilities in this movie, but the Skrulls were obviously seen as good. So I wonder, going forward, because Captain Marvel, obviously, I think is more powerful than Thor at this point, as shown. Yes. I mean, her powers came directly from the Tesseract, so she's going to be a big deal. The Kree and the Skrulls are very big deals in the comics. Obviously, the Skrulls have this thing called the Super Skrull, which combines all the Fantastic Four powers. And guess who's getting the Fantastic Four back in 2 days? Disney. Interesting.
Finally, a good Fantastic Four movie made.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm scratching the beard I don't have. Interesting. And then the other piece of that is Ronan. He's a Kree, and there are multiple other Kree already in the series. So I was reading something. I just went on this whole long explanation. I was reading something talking about how Talos in the movie says there are so many factions out there of Skrulls. And there would be a slight, you talk about the real world issue, there'd be a slight issue component if Marvel were to do this, because you see this now, that some refugee groups are great, they're thankful, and others aren't.
Yes.
And are hostile. So they suggested that perhaps the way the Skrulls turn evil, turn into more to their comic adaptation, is that a faction that's more upset rises up and takes power and becomes more hostile. However, you were using the Skrulls as an analogy for the real world. If you use a faction of this so-called refugee race to be hostile to other powers, I feel like that could possibly be a PR disaster.
It could. I wouldn't think of it so much like that. I mean, obviously I'm not from, I have a different viewpoint, but I think it would more kind of reflect on how, just because like a lot of movies have, one certain type of people, like one race of people, of aliens is, aggressive and this and that. Others are very peaceful, but we see that in the world that is far from the truth with us. Like different groups have different opinions, and that would be more realistic, more believable. So I think that would be a great idea, but I could definitely see the PR stuff. They would have to do it right. Kind of like how they did, empowering women in this movie.
Yeah.
Right? They might have to tiptoe to get their point across. We'll see.
There'd be at least a couple articles written crushing Marvel. Marvel's the worst thing in history.
Always.
Yeah.
There's always going to be those types of articles.
And that's kind of a bummer, because I think representation is important. And, like, you're already seeing some of the really great things that, like, have you seen any of the really cute pictures or stories of the little girls finally seeing a girl superhero movie that wasn't Supergirl?
No, I haven't.
No.
Oh, well, they're cute. And that, and then the majority black cast for Black Panther. These things, like, we're reaching tons of new audiences right now and kind of telling more stories, so it's not just the same people over and over and over again, which is awesome. But it kind of sucks that Marvel's almost kind of limited to telling these stories just because of the social backlash that they could be getting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we live in the era where if there's an opinion out there that maybe 5 people agree with initially, all of a sudden that's 5 retweets, and then that could become, the snowball effect is so real now, and all of a sudden Marvel has a legitimate issue on their hand, even though they're just telling the story of, I don't know, if you're talking about a Black Panther sequel, possible like colonialization or something like that. That was a true thing that happened, and I mean, no matter how terrible it was, like, it's not necessarily wrong of Marvel to tell that story, but of course, some of these topics, and this is what we deal with in real life, we hate talking about uncomfortable topics, but in reality, the world moves through uncomfortable conversations and topics, whether it's in the medical field, whether it's in a social arena, or in a political, or really any field. It's really these kind of things that also give us perspective along with it. But as you said, the problem is a lot of times if you try to come up close to that line as a multi-billion-dollar company, that's an issue. But also, you've seen it done correctly in certain cases. I know I don't necessarily agree with everything that has gone on with Nike recently, from different things that they've been doing, different ads and stuff like that. But, I mean, I still have no ill will against Nike. I still purchase just like anything else, any other decision. So, I mean, there is a way to do it and try to weather the storm, and I think Marvel definitely has the resources to do that, and the storytelling to do that. So it'd just be interesting where they go, because Black Panther he's dead now at the moment, but he's staying around. We know that. We know Captain Marvel is going to be staying around, and so these are stories that are going to be told, and as they go cosmic into the realms of these of the Skrulls, of other alien races, where if you squint and you're like, well, wait, they could relate to these different types of people, it's going to be a line they'll come up to closer and closer, and I think they'll succeed.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I kind of wanted to bring up Black Panther again, where I think that's a movie that they did right, since like they brought up the topic of colonialization, and that was a big issue with like Killmonger and everything. And his motivations, like, okay, I can understand it, and then he goes now we arm these populations to subjugate all the other populations that have, subjugated them in the past. And then it brings up the fact that no, just switching roles doesn't work. That's not how equality is achieved.
Yeah.
Equality is brought, when both sides work together. And I thought that was, it was amazing. Like, just how believable the character was. And then he has that one flaw. And then it's just, I thought it works so great.
I agree.
They really have great writers there.
They do, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's like a big part of why I like your question earlier, like why, like, is this, how Marvel is this? I thought it was very Marvel just because of how well the story can be told no matter how they tell it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have a lot.
Certainly.
They have a lot of gray area that many companies do not express enough. Where some people are good, some people are bad. But everyone has bad thoughts. Everyone has good thoughts. Like, how do they balance that? And how does that affect them? And how does that shape them as a person? I think Marvel does a great job at expressing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think going off that gray area comment, they also do a great job with they don't tell you how to think.
Yes.
In the sense that, like, Killmonger, like, there's kind of a general consensus that's like, hey, that dude kind of had a point. And T'Challa, the Black Panther, enacted on that point, but a lot of the characters, have good and bad moments. For instance, Tony Stark, he has PTSD, anxiety attacks, dealt with alcoholism or implied alcoholism throughout his run in the Marvel Universe. He created Ultron, for goodness sakes, because he was so paranoid. And yet you're able to make this judgment of, it's like, you can see how he's always trying to do the right thing, and you can make judgments on whether or not he goes too far or not. That was the whole thing with Civil War, right? I know, Thorne, you and I stood on opposite sides of it because our favorite characters were the titular characters fighting, but that sense of that you're able to sit in these gray areas and basically stand on a fence and decide, it's like, wait, did Thanos kind of have a point? Could you actually see what the cumulative villain of the past 11 years of this universe is like? You know what? He kind of had a point.
Thanos
no other
franchise.
No other franchise did that. And of course, you signed your latest email to our company saying that Thanos did nothing wrong. Which is
and the huge event on Reddit where they banned half the people from the subreddit in honor of Thanos.
That was hilarious.
I got banned.
So you were part of the Reddit decimation then? Yeah.
Yes. I have a little badge on my profile that says I was snapped.
That's amazing. Reddit, I've told you this time and time again, Reddit is a world I have not gotten into yet that I just do not understand.
There's a whole community for everyone that got snapped to just post shit posts about being snapped, and it's beautiful.
That's amazing. So, last real question I have before we'll go off on tangents, probably about Endgame, since we just got new content last week of that. What's the overall grade of the film? I give it an A-.
Yeah.
I'd say B+, A-. Yeah.
I'd go B+.
A lot of the comedy was just top notch. I thought really kind of raised the bar up for that.
Yeah, and I thought we talked about the favorite and our best actor performances earlier. I think every actor except for Jude Law, who to be truthful to him, didn't really wasn't really given a lot in this movie. To do. Yeah. Honestly. So a bit below his pay grade, but I thought everyone else elevated in their roles. From Larson to Jackson to the cat that played Goose. I thought everyone really... Well, yeah, he's a Flurkin in the movie, but he's still a cat, right? You're not telling me Flurkins are real. Okay. I thought everyone really elevated and gave their best shot and gave the movie, like we've mentioned, a unique flavor.
Oh, absolutely. It was every character was very personable. Even Jude Law in the beginning, I thought he was a nice guy until he did the really big 180 and then turned evil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed every person in there, especially Goose. That was great.
I would have to say the one kind of couple criticisms I would have is, they do the amnesia trope where, the person doesn't know who they are, so the movie's about figuring it out. Like, that's kind of done a lot. But I think, it was a good watch. Like, I didn't think about that while I was watching it, where some people might go, oh, I've seen this all, thousands of times. And then the other, I did definitely enjoy Captain Marvel's, portrayal. Sometimes it just seemed, though, she was kind of like flat-faced, if you know what I mean, like kind of emotionless in some parts. But I understood it. Like, a couple of times I was like, come on, that was funny. Like, crack a smile, like laugh for a second, or like show more anger here. But overall, like, it's just nitpicky stuff.
Right.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I didn't even think of that stuff. I agree.
Mm-hmm. So, last question that isn't on here, but as we're nearing the finish line here, I'm going to ask, how big of a role do we think Captain Marvel plays in Endgame? She does appear in the post-credit scene down to Earth with the pager we were teased with at the end of Infinity War, saying, "Where's Nick Fury?" And then, obviously, in the Endgame trailer, she has a funny interaction, standoff-ish thing with Thor.
I think she'll play a big role, but I think I think just recently Marvel confirmed that Avengers Endgame isn't about Captain Marvel saving the day, although she might play a big role.
Yeah.
I think that just was a recent, within the past week thing, where that would be an issue to some.
I think with a lot of these movies, and Thorin, you and I have talked about these movies for years, when these trailers come out, we're usually able to piece together kind of some of the plot lines. I know for Infinity War, we kind of nailed it with the fact that, well, we knew Wakanda was going to be last, and they duped us with the fact that there were only 2 Infinity Stones. But regardless, we still knew the Wakanda thing was last. We kind of pieced together the early movie scene of this was happening here. Okay, Tony obviously leaves Earth early, and that kind of stuff. We didn't know all of the twists, obviously, but we kind of figured it out.
Right.
I have no clue at all what is going to happen.
They did such a great job.
And this movie's like 5 weeks away, and that scares me a lot. Basically, the only things we know is that Tony's going to get to Earth, that Tony's going to live. Like, they show him in space, but he's going to somehow survive that. We know that... We don't even know this. Those white suits, we assume, are for the quantum realm, which would make sense why Ant-Man and the Wasp was in between these 2 movies. That'd be the only logical reason, because Marvel doesn't do anything by accident. Or that they can't pay off later.
Very true. I didn't even think about the quantum part.
So that's where I think that comes in, but like I said, we don't even know that. Like, that they just could be white suits. And Captain Marvel wasn't even in that part of the trailer. So is she actually there? I don't know. We know the Hulk will be something at some point. The Hulk's having his own mini arc. But other than that, we don't know anything. And we assume that Black Panther, Spider-Man are all coming back because they made Disney a bunch of money. And we assume someone's going to die, major, probably one of our favorite characters. But we don't know any of this, so it kind of bothers me. We also haven't seen Thanos, like, at all. So, like, what?
Yeah. If you look even at the way how they, in some of their trailers, there's a gap between people walking, and at first you don't think anything of it, and then in the next trailer it's the same scene, but that gap is filled with someone that they had previously edited out. And it's like, oh, the details are coming in, trickling in ways that we didn't even notice before. Or are they? Like, what is going on? And that's exactly what they want us to think, is what is going on.
Yeah, I'm prepared to have my soul ripped out, just fitting with a movie that has a soul stone in it.
Also, there's a prevalent theory that I see circling the Twitter and Reddit and whatnot, that Ant-Man may play a significant role in the fact of his shrinking and growing abilities. He could just climb into Thanos' mouth or his nose or any orifice that he may have and just expand.
Explode.
Boom. End of the movie. That's my theory.
Ugh, that'd be so gross.
Yeah, I still have to watch Ant-Man and the Wasp, if I'm being honest.
And Rogue One.
That too, yeah. But yeah, we could go on and we could go another 45 minutes for Endgame, and we will certainly when it comes out. So, Thorn, Katie, we don't have time really to play a game here, get a story in.
Can I bring up one more point?
Of course you can.
I want to change my idea or my favorite scene with Banter to the point where Talos is now understood and is on their ship with them, and they're all chilling in the cockpit, and they're like, well, what can you change into? Can you change into a cat? He's like, what's a cat?
Yes.
And they're like, and then Sam Jackson goes, what about a Venus flytrap? How much money will you give me if you turn into a Venus flytrap? And he's just sitting there just taking it like, what? You are all idiots.
$5 right now.
Yeah. He's like, I have this power to do this. And she asked me if I can turn into a plant.
Am I a joke to you? That's all I thought during that whole scene.
Honestly, I would probably do the same thing.
Yeah, it just came to me, and that was fantastic.
Thank you for bringing that back up.
Yes, thank you. That's a great point to end the show on.
Yes, I felt like it needed an extra laugh, and I remembered that.
It's accurate. It's true. So, thank you for teaming up with me for this. We'll have to do it again as the Assist Avengers. Thank you both.
Absolutely. A pleasure every time.
Thank you for listening to the Assist Podcast. If you like the show, go drop a 5-star rating. That really helps us keep the show going. If you want to stay updated with all of the podcast episodes, hit the subscribe button, and also go follow our Twitter, which is @assist_podcast, and our Instagram, which is now the Assist Podcast. And you can write any emails, any suggestions you have to theassistpod@yahoo.com, and we'll see you next week.